Hey
Hey,
there.
I'm back. Hi. The sound
Yeah,
okay?
and I'm coming in.
All
I'm
right.
coming in as well. Correct. Awesome.
Yep. Loud and clear.
You and
Let's
I
see.
have both kind of the same kind of lighting. It's hard to get like we need like studio lighting here. Yeah,
Yeah. It's kind of cloudy here today and I'm right in front of a window.
same
So
here.
I've got my ring light, but it doesn't really
Yeah,
do that much.
mine too. I have it on, but yeah, it's doing nothing.
Yeah. But I will do the spotlight on the slides most of the
Yeah.
time, so let's see.
How many
Hopefully we'll
registrations did we have for this?
last I checked yesterday there were 10. So there may have been a few more than that, but
How,
hopefully some people will show up,
yeah.
and if not, I guess we'll do it anyway,
Yeah.
right, for the recording?
Yeah. We should be fine. I don't think there's.
With the LinkedIn, it sends out a reminder. So hopefully that'll go out. Looks like we have an attendee joining. Welcome. We'll get started here in just a couple minutes. Thanks for joining us. If you want to type in the chat where you're from or let us know where you're tuning in from, that would be great. While we're waiting, let's see. Oh, Toronto. Great.
Somebody from my home city. Nice.
Oh, you're from Toronto?
Yes.
Nice. He says, what part of Toronto are you from?
West side, Mississauga. We could just do it in a coffee shop, right? Let me type it in. Mississauga, the West End. Although it's not as west as it typically gets to be. There's far more western cities or suburbs of Toronto. All right, looks like. Oh, nice. East side, Scarborough. We have the east and the west represented today.
Great. Well, it looks like it's noon, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and kick it off here. So welcome, everyone. Glad that you could join us today. I'm Laura Hill with Cloud Institute, and we're a cloud coaching company and training company. We offer cloud certification training and coaching to IT professionals, and all of our trainings include hands-on challenge labs, so you can actually practice your skills as well as receive the personalized coaching. So that's kind of one thing that's unique about us, or the challenge labs. We have over 1,000 different labs so that you can actually go in and whatever the tech stack you're working with, actually go in and practice and get scores. So today we're presenting on getting started with AWS certifications, and we have Zaki Medina here. Really excited to have you here, Zaki. A little bit about Zaki. He is a serial entrepreneur and also a multi-cloud and data expert, solutions architect, and certified cloud instructor. So he holds and maintains multiple AWS certifications. So you will be in good hands today to learn about all the different options there. He's really passionate about technology too. So always good to have him on and share with us. So just a little housekeeping before we get started. This webinar is going to run 30 minutes or so. Feel free to use the chat box to have ask any questions as we go along, and he'll get to them. Also, you can either make them public or private in the chat box, and we'll cover those questions either as he's going along or towards the end. And then you'll get a link to the replay will get sent out after we end, as well as I'll share the presentation deck in the chat box, so you can have that as a resource as well. So like I said, any questions, please reach out. We want to make this as valuable as we can for you. So let us know if you have any questions as we go along. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Zaki.
Thank you so much, Lara, for the kind introduction, and welcome everybody to getting started with AWS. So if you're thinking about getting your AWS or Amazon Web Services certifications, this is the spot. Today, this is the webinar to be in. And we know cloud computing is in huge demand. Almost 63% of IT leaders say it's really hard to find qualified engineers, more harder than Bigfoot, which means bigger news. 35% of them have actually found Bigfoot, maybe. I don't know. So, but anyway, if you're looking to jumpstart your career or looking to add on to your existing, maybe you have other cloud certifications, but you want to add in the right type of AWS certification to that and make some life-changing career paths, you're in the right space today. Very simple agenda today. We're going to go into which AWS cert makes sense for you, as well as what are the foundational level AWS certifications, as well as associate level AWS certifications, and then we'll have a closing for questions. And as we mentioned, it is a 30-minute window. There are other AWS certifications that we haven't covered, and they will be covered in the second webinar that we do as a follow-up to this next week at the same time. So we'll have some more details around those later on. So those are mostly around the professional and specialty certifications. So let's jump right in. So, what certifications, there's a conversation I want to have before we jump in, right? And we understand, hey, AWS certification is an industry recognized credential and so on, but we want to understand, take a moment to just look at what certifications are and what they are not, right? So certifications are really a proof of knowledge, and they prove that you're proficient, the individual is proficient enough to pass an exam, right? They're not really proof of experience. There's no real substitute for actually working in the cloud. However, there are some ways to get hands-on AWS cloud training outside of the workforce, and we'll cover some of those options available from Cloud Institute right at the end of our webinar today. And then certifications are door openers. Yes, they can get you in for an interview and be in consideration for maybe even a promotion and so on, but they're definitely not the golden ticket, right, to getting guaranteeing a job, right? So the common question I've heard from folks is, hey, will an AWS certification get me a job? And they do not ensure they will get you a cloud job, but they will tee you up for success. And really, it's up to you to earn it from there, right? And so that's what I tell all my students and participants and so on. And certifications are very valuable. In fact, the average salaries of AWS cert holders are well over $100,000 USD per year, right? So AWS certifications are some of the top paying cloud certifications out there, right? So certifications are not just about earning earning power. They're also about validating the knowledge that you have and ensuring, I would say it's even more when you start working with people, it creates this shared language or this common language that everyone can use. And this is often called cloud fluency. You'll hear that. How fluent are you? Can you say regions? Does that mean something? So those are some of the things around that. So let's jump in why AWS certifications are worth it, right? There's a real value. AWS was the first cloud, right? So they're still the market leader and dominant leader within cloud services. So you'll always find almost every enterprise is using, some kind of AWS service or resource. And 88% of, these are just some statistics, but really certifications have become sort of table stakes now. When you're evaluating any job, any promotion, that do you have these certifications? Do you have this validation that the exam would give you? And on top of that, as I mentioned, AWS certifications, these are just tools. Certifications are tools. They're not the end goal. They're just milestones along your learning journey, as I said to everyone. But then having those certifications will add a lot of things to your, bottom line, as in terms of salary expectations and so on. And so one very common example is a very popular AWS cert, which is called the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate level certification. It has sort of a median salary of 150K or so range, and these are sort of based on March 2022 numbers, right, of this year. So quick overview on certification. So that's, gives us sort of the underlying, understanding of why AWS certifications are important. Now let's go in. How does AWS, what are the different levels? So AWS basically, there's about, 11 individual certifications, and they're sort of spread across 4 different levels. Now, figuring out where to start and which is the best one really depends on you and your career goals, right? And I understand it may seem intimidating at first, but really, once you figure out what's what, the path usually gets more clear. And that's really the purpose of our webinar series for this webinar, as well as next week's webinar, where we cover advanced AWS certifications. So, and so there's basically, these 4 experience levels, or as AWS calls it, there's foundational, there's associate, professional, and specialty. So what do they mean? Sometimes I'll get a student, a participant ask me, hey, which is the easiest AWS certification you can think of? And I would say probably the first one, the foundational, right? The AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner. And why is it the easiest? Well, it's meant for both technical and non-technical. So it's really this cloud beginner-friendly certification, covers sort of the basics of AWS, where it doesn't really require any technical experience, right? But then you'll need to pay attention as anything else. And then we go into our associate, which we'll cover here. We have ones for architect, developer, and admin, right? These are sort of 3 common roles that you would see, and these are a lot more hands-on and so on. And then once you've built enough experience with the associate, let's say another year or 2, you can definitely go into the bigger ones, the solutions architect and the DevOps engineer. I would say the DevOps engineer is probably the hardest exam that I have actually encountered, what the feedback has been from students, but that's sort of like, you've got all the prerequisites done before that. And then we have these specialty ones for folks that are, hey, I'm part of the network team, I'm part of the security team, or I'm part of the data analytics or data and AI or data and machine learning team. Great. You want to jump into the big data. And it's, again, big data is a synonym, means really any data for now. So let's jump in. Let's take a look at, you know, basically, from a certification path, we'd start off at the cloud practitioner level, and then that would open up, all the other certifications within the associate track. And then there's really no hard and fast rule from the associate, but there is, if you want to go into the professional track. And so, and we'll cover some of that as well. And then we have those specialty tracks, which are sort of standalone, and so on. Again, we're covering the foundational and the associate today, and next week we'll definitely cover the remainder, the professional and the specialty, right? So feel free, and Lara will post the link below as well for the chat for next week's webinar, in case you have not registered and if you're interested in that. So let's jump in. Let's dive into the cloud practitioner. As I mentioned, the cloud practitioner exam, gives you sort of this high level introduction to AWS. It doesn't really go particularly deep in any of the services. Instead, it just provides a sort of a general overview of how AWS is structured, right? And a lot of times is, this is sort of where everybody starts from, right? And this is sort of really a great starting point for anybody who's new to cloud computing. From time to time, I as an instructor will go and do this every couple of years just to see, hey, what's the new content they've added in and so on. I find there's always something to learn there, right? So as this will help you sort of, build the foundations, no pun intended, as you delve deeper into the inner workings of AWS. And there's some great labs that we have at Cloud Institute around this. So I definitely encourage you to take a look at that course. And then let's jump into sort of the meat of that, right? It basically takes about a day to finish the foundational course, and then you can sit for the exam, you can do some prep work, and even come to Cloud Institute to do some labs. And then we jump into AWS Associate level certifications. So there's about 3 of them. So let's go to the first one. So essentially, you know, what does associate mean? It basically means if you're going to work on any AWS in any hands-on manner, right? So if you want to get any hands-on application, the associate level of certification should mark the point where your journey truly begins, right? So, if you think about it, the AWS Cloud Practitioner gives you that solid conceptual footing, but then it's the associate level certifications is where, the proverbial rubber meets the road, right? In terms of day-to-day implementation. And obviously the first one, my personal favorite to teach, and is the AWS Certified Solutions Architect, right? So this certification sort of gives you a broad overview of AWS, and again, it forms a very valuable foundation on which you can pretty much build everything, right? And it's actually one of the most in demand AWS certification. I call it the all-rounder, right, certification. And so, in fact, there's probably many surveys out there. You can look this up, but AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate has pretty much been the number one cloud certification for many years running, right? So, and this particular, or CSA as it's known, CSA Associate certification really focuses on core AWS services, like for instance, identity management and identity and access management, IAM, virtual private cloud like VPCs, S3 and EC2, right? So those are names of services, compute and storage that you could be using. Well, studying these core services is going to give you a very good understanding of how AWS approaches security, networking, data storage, and as well as compute capabilities, right? So anybody really coming new into cloud computing, we really recommend checking out the AWS Solution Architect or CSA Associate course. It's sort of the next best step you've got after you've gained your AWS Cloud Practitioner certification, which is the foundational one, right? And so, you know, a lot of times I've heard this from the field that a lot of developers and sysadmins might be tempted to go straight to the more of the developer associate or the sysops admin associate certs, and that's totally fine. More power to you. But I definitely always encourage people to go through the solutions architect. But it gives you sort of the whole picture, right? The 50,000-foot view of how all the pieces connect and plug in together. So that's really the key piece. So this is, again, as I mentioned, is very popular. Cloud Cert, there's a lot of data around the median salary for certification around for this type of cert, right? And obviously, it's not just that you have the cert, you have the cert plus all the requisite, uh, you know, information around it, like the experience and hands-on experience around that. Next, we jump into the AWS Certified Developer Associate, right? This is really for developers, although I would say really, who is a developer today? Almost everybody is doing some level of coding in every job, right? Starting with folks that just use spreadsheets and running macros on them to, folks doing some kind of, formula or some kind of plugging in some kind of code into a dashboard to see what, some kind of JavaScript or something. So everybody's doing some level of coding, right? So it's really for anyone. I would say this certification in my eyes have morphed into more of a anyone who uses AWS, right? And so, but it's more specific to if you want to go deeper into certain services. And those services are more like you want to go deeper into DynamoDB or Elastic Beanstalk or SQS and SNS, right? But not too deep, right? So, but you want to get a bit more information than what you get in the Cloud Practitioner foundational course, right? So again, there's an expectation for you to know a bit more about how you would use these services and how to present them to the outside world through APIs and SDKs, right? So you'll go through, like, there's a nice, interesting topic around data persistence and using DynamoDB and for the Alexa SDK, right? So this is, again, another certification, highly, highly recommend. You move on immediately after finishing the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam. There's a bit of overlap between the certs, and taking them close together makes it very easy. I often tell people do your CSA as well as your CD, which is Certified Developer, together, right? If you can do it, if you can cluster them together, that would be really, really easy to finish them off. And again, you get some more details into more of the stuff that a developer would need to know is how do I access the resources from a compute storage perspective within and through the APIs and doing those integrations and software development kits and so on. And then finally, we have sort of our AWS Certified Sysops Administrator, right? And so, this certification, again, is sort of it's kind of misleading, right? It's not, I don't believe it's not just for sysops admin. It's really anyone who wants to run things, on AWS. So the exam kind of goes really in depth into things like CloudWatch, right, which is AWS, like a monitoring tool, among other things. So it really gives you a more stronger grasp of everything that's going on in your AWS environment, because that's what it is. You're the sysops, you're the admin. You'll need to know everything under every rock, what's there. So this is, widely regarded as one of the hardest AWS associate certification. I've seen a lot of folks come in and say, "Hey, I passed the solutions architect and the developer one in a breeze. The CSA and the CD, was a breeze for me." But when they come to this, they get a little stumped, right? So just be fair warning. Again, very valuable to finish off all the associates before thinking of the professional ones, which is even harder. But within the associate track, I would say this one is sort of the hardest, right? So, again, one of the questions, and we'll talk a bit about that, but just a quick note here. For professionals, you're expected to know everything that the associate level exam has, like the back of your hand, and then even more, right? So that's one of the things that I found around this. So, you know, again, some of the questions that we get around, AWS, uh, you know, AWS, certifications is which one is sort of the, which one is sort of one of the best, right? Uh, which is one of the best certifications out there. And so for me, it's always been about, start with the foundations. Let me go back here. Let me go back here. Yeah, so start with the foundations and then go to the architect, then go do the developer, because then you can sort of cluster both the developer, the architect and the developer together in one sitting or in one study session, and then because there's a bit of overlap in them, and then spend some time doing, overtime. Don't rush. Take a break, come back maybe 6 months or a year, then do the DevOps one. And this would sort of give you the rounded approach. This is sort of what I feel is today you can just start with Cloud Practitioner, and then maybe a month from now or maybe 6 months from now, as you continue to work on, study for the first two associates, and then the next 6 months do the final one. So this way it's kind of is a nice little 1 year. You can get everything sorted, get all your associate and foundational certifications out. I also want to check out how does it SysOps actually fit in, right? And so the assumption here is that whenever you attempt associate is, they recommend you for to come with 1 year experience. But again, it all depends. If you're working for a startup or if you're working for a consulting firm, obviously a year or a month in that is equivalent to a year, I guess, because you'd be working on so many environments and you're thrown in the deep end right at the beginning. So, so see where you are around that, right? Around that, and so on. So that's what my take on this. So anyway, so this is sort of the thing is if you're interested, you could do, if you're not interested in developer, for most folks, I would say at least do the solutions architect associate and then go straight to SysOps administrator. And that will give you the very rounded approach to everything in AWS, you'd be very hands-on. You'd have all, you'd be a very seasoned veteran coming in. And then if you choose to, over the number of years, as you gain more acumen, more expertise, more hands-on experience, definitely attempt the professional ones and so on. And then if your job deems it, or you want to bring in some extra capabilities, you can definitely look at the specialty ones, especially around network and security and data as an example. So why don't I pass it off to Lara here. Lara, take it away. If there's any questions as I look in the chat, I don't think there is any. But Lara, thank you for posting the webinar. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you so much. Thank you, Zaki. Thank you for all that great information. I do see that we've had some good people engaged and listening in. So as always, if you have questions either now or after this presentation, feel free to reach out to us at Cloud Institute. I did have a couple of things to share in terms of resources that we offer. The first being Challenge Labs. I'll put into the chat here, we have AWS Challenge Labs, and this is a great way to just practice your skills, and it's a great price, so you're welcome to click on that link there to see about how you can use that to practice your skills. And then we also have a boot camp, which is the next link I'll post. We're currently running a special where you can save 50% off on our AWS bootcamp. So that includes 2 hours of one-on-one coaching, and you can actually earn 3 certifications at the same time with this bootcamp. So highly encourage you to check that out on our website. And finally, if you are at all interested in team training, please do reach out to us. You can book a call and talk to someone on our team about tailor training your team's for your team's goals, so you can get a discount for multiple people there. So we offer that as well. And I'm not seeing any further questions here, but like I said, if you think of any afterwards, please feel free to reach out to us. You go to our website, cloudinstitute.io. Reach out to us there. We'll send you after this session's over, we'll send you the recording so you can watch that. And also, please feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. We always like to expand our network and keep supporting you guys. So we've got in the works more webinars we'll be adding to our calendar. Like Zaki mentioned, next week we're doing the advanced AWS certifications. If you're more interested in those, please join us for that, and then just connect with us on LinkedIn, and that way you can always know if we have other topics that might be of interest to you. But thank you so much, Zaki, for being here with us. It's been a great presentation.
And take care, everyone.
Lots of
Have
good
a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.